Well, welcome to Story Starters. I've got a newer book this month or this week with me. It's called The Girl Who Speaks Bear by Sophie Anderson. So I'll read a couple chapters. The Girl Who Speaks Bear. Prologue. I remember the bear who raised me, nuzzling my face into her warm belly, huge furry limbs shielding me from the biting snow. I remembered the deep rumbles of her snores through the silent winter and clouds of steamy breath smelling of berries and pine nuts. My foster mother, Mamochka, says I was about 2 years old when she found me outside the bear cave. She says I was standing naked in the snow, but with warm pink cheeks and the biggest smile. I walked right up to her, lifted my arms into the air, and made a soft barking sound. Mamochka picked me up, and I laid my head on her shoulder, wrapped my legs around her waist, and fell straight to sleep. Mamochka says she knew right there and then we were meant to be together. But if I don't know where I came from, how can I be sure where I belong? Mamochka looked in the cave for clues about who I was or who my parents might be, but an old female bear was hibernating inside. Not wanting to disturb her, Mamochka crept away and carried me to her home at the edge of the snow forest. I love living with Mamochka. She's the best mother I could have wished for, but I often wonder about the bear. I wonder if she remembers me, maybe even misses me. I wonder about the bear almost as much as I wonder about my real parents, the ones who must have lost me or left me in the forest. One day, I'd like to find the story of my past, and I hope it's something more magical than being unwanted and abandoned as a baby. I hope it's a tale filled with wonder that explains who I am and why I'm different, why I hear the trees whispering secrets, and why I always feel the forest pulling me in. Chapter 1. Yanka the Bear. They call me Yanka the Bear, not because of where I was found. Only a few people know about that. They call me Yanka the Bear because I'm so big and strong. I tower above all the other 12-year-olds and almost all the grown-ups too. And I'm stronger than everyone, even the ice cutters and the wood choppers and the few hunter-gatherers who are brave enough to dip into the snow forest. About 100 people live here in the village on the southern edge of the forest, and right now they're all squashed into the square, preparing for the festival tomorrow. Snow sparkles and excitement fills in the air. For over 6 months, the village had been trapped by the fierce cold of winter. But tomorrow marks the start of the big melt. The great frozen river will thaw, and the snow forest will lose its blanket of white. I'll be able to wander beneath newly green trees. I won't wander far. Mamochka worries if I do. But just the thought of standing beneath swaying willows and chattering pines makes my cheeks tingle with happiness. People call for my help as I cross the square. I stop to hold up wooden beams for the carpenters assembling the stage for the snow festival. I help drive poles into the frozen earth for the climbing contest, and I haul creaking sleds up from the frozen river, loaded with blocks of ice for the ice fort. The fort is already as tall as the village hall, but children still clamber over its shining walls, building it even higher. Finally, I reach the center of the square, where my best friend, Sasha, is stacking wood for the festival bonfire. Hey, Sasha. I smile and wave. Hey, Yanka. Sasha smiles from beneath his huge furry hat. We've been best friends since I pulled him out of a nettle patch when I was 3 and he was 5. I rubbed his strings with dock leaves and asked him to climb a tree with me. Mamochka says that was the first time I ever smoke. Sasha is long and leggy as a heron. Until this winter, we stood eye to eye, but after my latest growth spurt, I see right over the top of his head. I never imagined I'd grow this big, and I'm not sure I'll ever get used to it. Shall we carry this one together? Sasha lifts one end of the long cut tree. I can manage it. I swing the log onto my shoulder, and my feet sink deep into the snow. Sasha picks up another, smaller log, and we clump them side by side to the bonfire stack. Sasha's youngest cousin, Vanya, rushes over with his arm full of twigs. He beams up at me, wide-eyed. You're as strong as a bear, Yanka. I lower the log onto the bonfire stack and smile. I don't mind my strength being compared to a bear's. Not really. But it does remind me how different I am, and not only in my size and strength. Everyone else in the village was born here, and so were their parents and grandparents. They wear fur coats passed down from great-grandfathers and sleep under blankets knitted by great-grandmothers. But I don't know where I was born, or who my real parents are, or how I ended up in a bear cave. The not knowing feels like a hole inside me that gets a little wider every year. I heave another log up onto my shoulder and push away these wintry thoughts. Soon the bonfire stack is as tall as me, and I smile as I imagine the heat of it burning tomorrow. Sasha is laughing with a group of children who have climbed down from the ice fort. His hat is in his hands, and his feathery hair is sticking up at all angles. I recognize everyone in the group. There are only about 20 children in the village, and we all go to the same school, and always have, so I shouldn't feel awkward around them. But I stumble as I walk over, then smile nervously. No one seems to notice. Maybe because they're busy making plans for tomorrow, or maybe because my head is so much higher than all of theirs. I try slouching and bending my knees, but I still don't fit into the group. I feel like a cuckoo chick in a nest of wrens. The pale gray sky darkens and frost bites into the air. Winter might be ending, but the warmth of spring still feels far away. It's always like this. Snow that melts in the sun, refreezing in the gloaming, so the nights are full of ice and glacier sharp. A bullfinch flutters past, so close that its feathers graze my cheek. It swoops up and away towards the forest. I can only see a few spindly treetops from here, but they feel like thick ropes tugging at my heart. I'm nearly at the top of the hill that rises up from the village before I realize I've wandered away from the others. Sasha catches up to me and punches my arm as he falls into step beside me. What's that for? I punch him back as gently as I can, but still he wobbles away from me. Trying to get a head start. Sasha pulls out the blades that clip onto his boots to turn them into ice skates. Race you to my house. Yes. My heart lifts, then sinks as I remember why I'm not wearing skating boots. I have outgrown 3 pairs this winter and can't face having more made. It scares me, thinking how fast I've grown this year, so much faster than other years that I get pain in my legs at night. I fumble with my pockets and sigh. I forgot my blades. Again? Sasha groans. I don't mind if you skate without me. I stop at the top of the hill. A track of sheet ice covers the path here and stretches all the way to Sasha's house, and then on to my and Mamochka's front door. I know Sasha loves to glide along the ice, graceful as a swallow in flight, but he doesn't clip on his blades. Let's go through the forest instead. He bounces over to a gnarly old elm we used to climb when we were little. There's a trail behind it, that winds between the trees and loops around our garden. I've always preferred walking back that way, and Sasha knows it. Warmth floods through me. Sasha makes the best friend. Stepping into the snow forest is like stepping into another world. The tall, tall trees make me feel small. My mind tingles and my senses come alive. Sometimes in the forest, I can feel so close to the story of my past, I can almost hear it on the wind. Are you excited for the festival? Sasha asks, his eyes shining. I nod, thinking of all the things I enjoy about the festival. The games, the music, and the shows, racing on the freshly iced sledding hill with Sasha, and running through the fire maze with Momochka. The fire maze doesn't involve real fire. Huge sheets of flowing silks, cut and painted to look like flames, are draped over the stage. Everyone runs through them at the end of the night, laughing when they get tangled or lost in the sheets, and emerging with faces glowing like embers. The first time I went through the fire maze, when I was 3 or 4 years old, I was scared. So Momochka stood on the other side and beckoned me through. I'm not scared anymore, but she still stands on the other side when I run. I can't wait for the siege game. Sasha beams. Did you see how high the ice fort is this year? Higher than the village hall, I murmur, distracted by the sound of the forest. I duck under a branch, and snow shivers onto the back of my neck. The forest has moods, and at this moment it feels restless, with the snow dripping and the birds rustling, animals scurrying up trees and dashing along tunnels under the snow. Sasha goes on about the games, but I can't concentrate. I feel on edge, like the forest is trying to tell me something. Yanka? Sorry, what? Were you listening to the trees again? Sasha smiles. Have they told you who you are yet? Blood rises into my cheeks. Me and Sasha have always told each other everything. Now, sometimes, I wish he didn't know quite so much about me, like how I hear things in the forest, and how much I wonder about my past. Shall I call for you tomorrow? Sasha asks. I'm helping Momochka carry her remedies to the square and set up her stall. We're leaving at first light. I'll come and help. You don't have to. I want to. My parents are sledding over to pick up my grandparents, so I'm on my way in the morning anyway. Sasha runs off into his back garden. See you tomorrow. I walk on to my and Momochka's garden and linger under the pines at the edge of it, to be near the forest a few moments longer. Our garden, like Sasha's, runs straight into the forest, with no fences or gates to separate the two. At the moment, it's a flat patch of snow, but after the big melt, we'll turn over the earth and plant seeds. By the time the long summer days arrive, it'll be bursting with color, fruits, flowers, and hundreds of herbs, dancing with bees and butterflies. The herbs are Momochka's livelihood. She harvests them, dries them, grinds them up, and makes all kinds of remedies. Whenever I'm unwell, she has a tonic or a tea to make me feel better. This winter, she even made a special ointment, just for me, when I complained that my feet ached from growing too fast. People say Momochka can cure anything, that if she wanted to, she could cure the sky from bleeding at sunset, because she has the wisdom of the snow forest inside her. Momochka feels the forest too, fierce and gentle all at once. Her hands are smooth but tough, like new bark. Her hair is dark, like the shadows between pines, and she smells sweet, like lime blossoms. When Momochka was younger, she'd walk deep into the forest, collecting wild herbs and berries for her remedies. That's how she ended up finding me in a bear cave. But these days, she stays in the village and grows everything she needs in her garden. Like all the other villagers, she says it's dangerous in the forest, and that her most important job now is to keep me safe. I wish she'd let me explore just a little farther, but she says I could get lost or frozen, or be attacked by one of the many predators that stalks between the trees. A flash of pink on a snowy branch catches my eye. It's another fat, round bullfinch. I smile at him, slide my hands into my pocket, and hold out a few of the sunflower seeds, and pull out a few of the sunflower seeds I always carry for the birds. Holding my hand out flat and still, with the seeds on my palm, I whistle, low and mournful. The bullfinch tilts his head and edges down the branch. Then he jumps and flutters onto my hand. Yanka! My breath catches in my throat. I'm sure the bullfinch said my name. Yanka! The bird calls again. Yanka the bear! Come back to the forest! I stare at the bullfinch, mouth open. I heard his words as birdsong, but they made sense in my mind. I leaned closer, willing the bullfinch to say something else. But tiny paws scamper up the back of my reindeer skin coat, and Mousetrap, our house weasel, launches himself from my shoulder and dives straight at the little bird. The bullfinch flaps just in time, and Mousetrap lands on my hand, sending the sunflower seeds raining into the snow. He coils around my wrist and looks up at me guiltlessly, licking his lips. I frown at him and shake my head. I wish you wouldn't hunt the birds I feed. Aren't there enough mice in the house for you? Mousetrap shakes himself, fluffing up his fur, then drops to the ground and sprints back across the garden. A streak of copper against the snow. Mousetrap's fur doesn't turn white in winter like other weasels because he lives by our fire. Mamochka knocks on the kitchen window. Sabaitan? She mouths the word, holding up my favorite yellow mug. I smile and nod, feeling warmer at the thought of the hot honey drink. I glance back in the direction the bullfinch flew, and he's gone. I tell myself I imagine understanding him, but my heart knows different. The trees whisper and the snow drips secrets. I feel the pull of the forest, stronger than ever before. Somewhere, deep in the dark between the trees, hides the truth of my past. My heart races and my toes twitch. I stamp the snow from my boots and brush off my coat, but I can't shake the restless feeling from my legs. And as the front door swings shut behind me, I hear the bullfinch once more, far in the distance. Yanka the bear, come back to the forest. You belong here. Chapter 2. Anatoly. Anatoly arrives at night, with ice in his beard and moonlit eyes. Excitement bubbles inside me as I watch him through the forest-coated window. He unharnesses and feeds his sled dogs, brushes each of them carefully, checks their paws, and whispers their names. Nesta, Bayan, Pyotr, and Zoya. Finally, he settles them into a shelter and comes inside. He ducks through the doorway, huge as a bear in his deerskins and furs, but once he peels off his layers and sits by the fire in his threadbare tunic, he looks thinner and older than I remember. There are deeper wrinkles around his silvery eyes, and more white hairs in his lopsided beard, which doesn't grow evenly because of the burn scars on his cheeks. But his smile is the same. He looks down when he smiles, and flesh is pink as a bullfinch's belly. It's been 2 months since Anatoly last visited, And though that feels like forever, it's not that long. Sometimes there's half a year or more between his visits, other times a few weeks. I wish he visited more regularly. I miss him when he's not here and spend too much time wondering when he'll come. Anatoly lives alone in the forest, hunting, fishing, and trapping animals to survive. No one in no one in the village knew he existed until about 10 years ago when he turned up on Mamochka's doorstep, asking for an ointment to soothe his burns. They were old scars from a forest fire years before, but he said they still ached and itched at night. Since then, Anatoly has visited at least once a year, and often many times more. Occasionally, he stays for a night, sleeping by our fire, and people in the village tease Mamochka and say he's her sweetheart. She just laughs and says you can't have a sweetheart who spends all their time hiding in the forest. But her eyes shine brighter and her smile spreads wider when he visits. You look like you haven't eaten since I last saw you. Mamochka pours Anatoly a cup of tea with lemon and passes him a basket of soft, spiced cookies with a glaze as white as the snow outside. Mamochka is small, half the size of either Anatoly or me, but she takes up more space. She bustles around, strong and unstoppable, filling the room with as much movement and life as a flight of doves. Anatoly sips his tea and bites a cookie, and color floods into his face. I've eaten well, but I've been in the far north these last months, and the cold makes me thin. What did you find? I ask, tingling with anticipation for the story. When Anatoly comes out of the snow forest, there's always a story. When I was young, I believed all of Anatoly's tales, whether they were about wolf packs hunting under moonlit snow or fire dragons leaping from volcanoes. Because his stories came from the forest, like me, they felt like clues to my past. Now I know Anatoly's stories are just stories. Mamochka has told me often enough. But still, I like to believe them in the moments when he tells them, and sometimes afterward, in the depths of night, when the branches outside my window shine silver, and I can't sleep for thinking about what secrets the forest holds. Anatoly smiles his shy smile, reaches deep into his pocket and pulls out a map. He smooths the tattered old paper over the low table between us, and I search for the new mark. There's always a new mark, hidden somewhere among the inky trees, to show where the story begins. Here is the village. Anatoly points to the neat drawing of the village on the southern edge of the map. And here's your house. His finger hovers over my and Mamochka's house, which is marked by two small hearts inside a square. Anatoly always points out all the features on his map, even though I've seen it so many times I can draw it from memory. But I don't mind. I like listening to his gentle voice rumble against the crackling of the fire, and I like watching his calloused fingers skate through the sketched forest. It also gives me a chance to find the new mark on my own. The mark might be a large feature, like the picture of a crumbling castle that appeared last year to go with a story about a bear who had once been human. Or it might be a small feature, like the claw hidden in a glade that sparked a story about how a lone baby girl stood up to a pack of wolves. Anatoly told me that story when I was very young, and I still have the wolf claw he gave me under my pillow. Sometimes running my finger along it makes me feel brave, but at other times the sight of the thick, dark hook as long as my thumb makes me pull my blankets tight around me. My gaze drifts across the map, north towards the forest along a narrow, winding trail. Creatures hide among the trees, wolves and wolverines, badgers and bears, snakes and squirrels. Past the first of Anatoly's 5 cabins, the trail disappears, so I follow the silver stream instead, its rippled surface dotted with ice floes and leaping fish. The Yaga house has moved again. I pointed to a drawing of a house with chicken legs nestled in a pine thicket. Winter has been harsh this year. Anatoly nods gravely. The house got it so cold its knees splintered. It stood up in the middle of the night, and the cracks sounded like thunder. I heard it over 10 miles away. It ran south, its feet pounding along the river bank, until it warmed up and settled in this cozy thicket. The Yaga who lives in the house wasn't happy at all, as she doesn't like moving closer to the living. You know Yaga prefer dead souls. Dead souls and houses with chicken legs. Mamochka folds her arms over her chest and shakes her head. You fill her mind with nonsense, Anatoly. There's truth in all my stories, Anatoly says quietly. He glances up at me with a look of such sincerity that I want to tell him I believe every tale he's ever told. Instead, I rise to my feet and open the long wooden box on the mantelpiece. Inside is my favorite ink pen and my own copy of Anatoly's map. I drew it myself the last time he was here, and although it's not as neat as his, I'm proud of it. I roll it out on the table and carefully draw the house with chicken legs in its new position. Mamochka disappears into the kitchen, still muttering about nonsense. She only believes in things she can see for herself. But she wasn't always so dismissive of Anatoly's stories. When I was younger, she used to repeat them to me before bed in her matter-of-fact style. Or she'd sing me the songs of her ancestors about the power of nature and the healing magic of the forest. But she seems to have decided 12 years old is too old for stories. Last time Anatoly visited, after I went to bed, I heard Mamochka tell him she worries that his stories keep me wondering about my past. Anatoly told her I'm a magical bear child who will always wonder where I came from. Mamochka replied it would be better if my heart was in the village, rather than getting lost in the stories of the forest. At that point, I turned over in bed, not wanting to hear any more, and sang myself to sleep. I finished drawing the house with chicken legs and leaned back over Anatoly's map to see what else is new. But my gaze lands on the blue mountain, and I can't pull it away. Nestled high in the cliff is a sketch of the bear cave where I was found, with me as a baby inked inside, snuggling into the arms of the bear Serena. Anatoly always refers to the bear who raised me as a Serena, a queen of the snow forest. My feet ache with the same restless feeling I had earlier after I heard the bullfinch speak. Outside, the snow glistens, and an urge to make footprints in it swells inside me. The bear cave. Anatoly's voice cuts through my thoughts. He gently touches the map, right next to the cave, where your Mamochka found the most precious treasure ever discovered in the snow forest. Mamochka places a mug of Sabitan in front of me and drops a kiss onto my head. She smiles at Anatoly, and he smiles back without looking away. For a moment, I feel like the three of us belong together, like a real family. How long are you staying? I blurt out, then regret the question, because Anatoly's face burns bright red all the way to his ears, and he doesn't answer. Mamochka leans down and tops up the teapot with hot water from the samovar. Steam rises when she opens the tap in the shining brass urn, the heat in the air disguising Anatoly's blushing. What's that? She asks, pointing to a triangular mark on the map. I peer at the triangle embedded high in the trunk of a tall, slim birch. Inside the triangle is the letter N with a crown on top. It's the new mark. Excitement rushes through me, washing away the twinge of disappointment I felt at not finding the mark myself. And it has something to do with Princess Nastasia. I recognize the crowned N of her symbol. Anatoly has told me stories about her before, and some of them have hinted that she might be my birth mother. The thought that might be true, the thought that might be true, and I might learn something about her, gives me a sudden breathtaking thrill, like skidding slightly out of control on ice. Anatoly pulls an object wrapped in cloth from his pocket and passes it to me. It's as big as my palm, is heavy, and feels cold through the cloth. Mousetrap pokes his head out of the hole in the corner near the fire and sniffs the air. He's a fierce and proud hunter and never begs for food, unless it's freshwater cod brought by Anatoly. But it's not cod in the parcel. Inside is a triangular ice blue rock, smooth as glass, with a tip and edges as sharp as a knife. Anatoly has made a hole in the wide end and threaded it with a leather cord so it can be worn as a necklace. The rock trembles in my hand. It feels unnaturally cold, like there's a snowstorm inside it. The corners of Mousetrap's mouth turn down when he realizes there's no fish on offer. But perhaps he catches the scent of a story to come, because he edges closer, scoots up the back of my chair, settles onto my shoulder, and stares at Anatoly expectantly. I am going to stop there. Again, the book for today was The Girl Who Speaks Bear by Sophie Anderson. And we've got the book at the library if you'd like to check it out and find out what happens for the rest of the story. So thank you very much for joining me today.